animal welfare. All I can say is that every time a big truck drives by with pigs inside of it, I do cry, and they look very sad.
Can you tell me what the Farm Bill is?
Nope. Farm Bill? Yeah, nope.
Animal welfare? Well, I assume that's when an animal family is below the poverty line and receives additional support from the government. So the Farm Bill is the man who has worked on the farm for 80 years.
Tell me, what do you know about Proposition 12 in California?
Oh, nothing.
I know nothing about that. I'm so sorry.
Animal welfare, like how they take care of the animals. You know, agricultural and food things.
I don't know what the Farm Bill is.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the CAP podcast. My name is Sydney Schnorr and today we will be hearing from Jocelyn and Lindsay, and they're going to be helping us explore the current issue of insufficient agricultural land and what can be done with that land with their three wonderful guests. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to them.
Welcome, I'm Lindsay Galbraith, and I'm with my co-host Jocelyn Chambers. Today, we will be going into a deep dive into the current issue of insufficient farmland and talk with some experts in the field on how we will solve this issue.
To give a little background on this issue, in the United States, we have some of the most productive farmland in the world. But with a growing population, farmland has gotten lost to urbanization. Urbanization can have many negative effects on agriculture and society, as losing farmland can result in insufficient production of food. Although, with the growing population, urbanization is necessary and can even have some positive effects. Urbanization can contribute to economic growth and can have a positive impact on the environment. To create a balance between urbanization and having sufficient agricultural land, we must look at practical solutions. To be the most productive with the farmland that we have now, it is important to take care of our land. Soil health is a primary concern of farmers in the United States. The USDA reports that many farmers have reported concerns about water-driven erosion and poor drainage. Urban farming practices are also a growing solution to producing food in new ways.
Our first guest today is Clayton Mooney with Clayton Farms. Clayton Farms, here in Ames, provides fresh salads directly to consumers by growing lettuce in an indoor setting, and it is hand-picked daily. Clayton grew up on his family farm and is here to talk with us today about his transition into an urban agriculture setting.
Clayton Mooney, co-founder and chief farmer at Clayton Farms. We are known for building farm plus restaurants to serve the world's freshest salads, wraps, and smoothies.
Okay. So our first question today is, what is your opinion about current land usage or availability in the United States?
I think it's the best opportunity we've ever had to actually experiment. There's a lot of opportunities meshing technology with traditional kind of farmland mindset. And then it's cheaper than ever to build technology and start new businesses.
What are some solutions that you think can help with the land availability and food production?
I think we need to apply a new lens when we think about food. So growing up in Southeast Iowa, surrounded by traditional farmland, I've come to the realization that I thought that was always farming. Flash forward to today, I'm an indoor farmer growing food year-round with no soil in Iowa. So I'm able to look at a vacant space or a vacant building and realize that you can bring new life to it literally through growing food indoors. And so I think it's really important that we can all look at different areas and locations through that lens.
How have your personal experiences changed your perceptions toward land?
So growing up on a small family farm in Southeast Iowa, so my family farm is still there today, mostly row crops, so corn and beans. I didn't realize until a lot later in life that not all farmland is created equal. And so growing up, you assume that, if this field is growing corn, you travel from Southeast Iowa to Northwest Iowa, that field's growing corn. It's all equal. But then after I left the family farm, I was just able to get more educated on understanding kind of the pros and cons of different areas, the soil qualities. And that really shifted my perception of what farmland is out there, and then kind of the pros and cons or the efficiencies of how it's used. My opinion is most farmland could be improved through different inputs and kind of different approaches to it.
How do you think urbanization and a growing population have impacted agricultural land availability?
So I have strong opinions on this one, because growing up in a food desert, so you had to travel about 25 minutes to get to the nearest Walmart. Flash forward to today, there's Dollar Generals popping up, which I think is not necessarily a good thing. I think they put a stranglehold on that community. And so if rural communities are shrinking, there's still food deserts, or there's more food deserts than ever before today, we need to look at new approaches to growing. And so through urbanization, I feel like food production should be a box that is mandatory to be checked, and kind of taking that step to new communities. And we need to get more people excited about specifically urban farming, especially individuals who they feel overwhelmed when it comes to farming because maybe they didn't grow up on a farm. But if they could understand that they could learn about, the seeding, the transplanting, the growing year round, I think that skill set is valuable whether you want to have a career in it or not.
I just had a little follow up on that.
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to take education wise to actually kind of get that mindset change? Do you think it starts in schools with kids, or do you think, or you think with the adult population now, getting that into rural areas, that urban farming and that, that mindset change kind of you talked about, where do you think that starts?
I think we're all products of our environment. So if you can be surrounded by individuals who are excited by urban farming and bringing kind of new purpose to vacant spaces, I think that's the best route. If you could teach it in school at a very practical level of just how to grow lettuce without soil and how to grow lettuce in a fully controlled environment, I think that's also a great approach. Mm-hmm. But I think the educational piece is something that we're always trying to solve at Clayton Farms, because when it comes to marketing for us, if I just say we have fresh salads, anybody else can really say that. Even the gas station to-go salads say fresh salads, right? But part of our marketing is that educational piece. And so the history involved in a vacant space. So for instance, we took over a Fazoli's Italian restaurant. The day we got the keys, it still smelled like breadsticks in there. And when we walked into the dine-in space, or the original or previously dine-in space, mm-hmm. we said for the first time ever, this is actually going to grow food in here. And so that mindset that to us was very normal, 6-7 years into building the business and understanding indoor farming. Yeah. When we went to launch and we said, if somebody's driving down the road and they look over and they see, lettuce growing in the window, what does that mean to them? And will their curiosity be piqued? And if so, and they come in, can we help educate them on how we can utilize this vacant restaurant space and grow enough food to support a restaurant year round? And for us, that's very much on the educational side for all of our marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. So kind of just exposure, just more and more kind of helps, and yes. The education side.
Yeah, and we host a lot of tours, everything from Iowa State Extension offices to classes, to community members, to even artists who are wanting to come into our farms and be inspired in the dead of winter, just to be kind of surrounded by plants. And I think it's very therapeutic in a lot of ways.
Yeah, okay, cool, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So kind of going off that and what you said earlier about not all farmland being equal, so with growing indoors, do you see that more plants are more uniformed?
Yes. So no matter how good your growing technology is, or in our case, the hydroponic equipment that we designed and built, along with the software that essentially runs that equipment, no matter how good that is, it still comes down to your environment. So if you provide a pristine, happy environment, you'll get uniform, consistent, happy, healthy plants. And then another kind of step we take towards that is really taking advantage of the cubic footage. So greenhouses, in my opinion, are really difficult to run as a business here, especially in Iowa. Dead of winter, you are paying too much to heat. Summertime, you're spending too much to cool. And most times you're wanting to use the sun. And so you only have kind of one layer of growing, but you're heating and cooling all of that space. And so we've taken the approach that whatever the space you move into, you've got to get the environment right. So for instance, lettuce likes 70 degrees year round, 50 to 70% humidity. B, you need to take advantage of growing food clear to the ceiling if possible, just because you need to produce as much food per square foot at the end of any given year. And so that's really, really important to understand, that environment and then just how much food you could produce out of a given space.
What does a balance of urbanization and protecting farmland look like to you?
Good question. I hope to always have my family farm. And so I don't know what that looks like today, but I don't plan to sell the 40-some tillable acres there. I would like to maybe rent it out in the coming years. But we do need to look at some facts. Like every year, rural communities are continuing to shrink. People are wanting to be closer to, city centers where just more things are going on, right? And so I think we need to embrace that. And one thing that I would like to see is from a state level to a federal level, some of the funding that goes into trying to revitalize rural communities, maybe a sliver of that is to then support and give kind of new experiments and new grants to urban farming, because I feel like both need to kind of live in unison with each other in the coming years. But I also don't see ourselves competing as lettuce farmers here in Iowa with the 95% of lettuce production that comes from California and Arizona. I think everybody could coexist and learn from each other.
I did have one question. I know it's probably difficult, but to define urban farming, what kind of what does that all include? Is that also local community gardens, things, or is it, what's your definition of actual urban farming?
Yeah, so my definition, I've tried to break it down to as simple as possible, and it's growing food as close to people as possible. So whether that is a community garden that is seasonal, a greenhouse, a vacant warehouse, a restaurant, any of those, I would say, in my mind, is urban farming. But that kind of goes back to the why around when we started the company as a technology company, first and foremost. My big why, there's a statistic out there that right now, if you walk into a grocery store produce aisle, all the food sitting on that shelf is missing a third or more of its nutrition. And that's because it's older than 3 days post-harvest. And it's not the farmer's fault, not the distributor's fault, and not the grocer's fault, but because they're segmented, they can't fix this. And so lettuce that's showing up on the grocery store shelf here in Iowa is 10 to 11 days into its 14-day shelf life. So if you could fix that, the answer, in our opinion, is owning the supply chain or the vertical integration. So if you're the farmer and the retailer and you're going direct to consumer, that's awesome. You get the full flavor, full nutrition. The only way you do that is growing food closer to the consumers.
I like that.
What do you think are some underused spaces in cities that you think urban agriculture could be incorporated into?
So as we think about expanding, we've focused on everything from standalone, vacant restaurants. So as an example, in 2023, almost 100,000 restaurants shut down in the U.S. A lot of restaurants were restaurants with dine-in space no one wanted to go to anymore. So as an example, Burger King with play places, almost 1,000 of those shut down. So we see that as it's sitting there. It was already kind of, the infrastructure is there and exists. So we're really excited about expanding that way. Another option is like strip malls. Malls in general are absolutely going over kind of this big facelift of how it could be better utilized. So as an example, 15 years ago, it would have been a bunch of retail locations. Flash forward to today, you have indoor golf, you have the smash rooms, all of these different setups, because they're trying and experimenting with ways to bring new life to these giant pieces of buildings that if they did an experiment over the next couple of years, they would absolutely all just go empty. And so I think there's a lot of underutilized or vacant space previously in the retail side. Another possible approach in the future is going back to industrial zone space, so like warehouse space. That's where we started, in the Iowa State University Research Park, having our farm there. It's a warehouse essentially, or it's a lab space. It's in the middle of a building. You would never think that you would want to grow a bunch of food in it, but it happens to work really well.
How do you envision that the growth of urban agriculture can help diminish food insecurity?
So as I mentioned earlier, making sure we coexist. Like I don't feel like I'm competing with any traditional farmers. They shouldn't feel, threatened by what we do. When I was growing up, I understood a food desert as you have to travel essentially 10 miles or more to get access to essentially fresh food or produce, right? That was from very much a rural mindset. I think food deserts exist today in both rural and urban settings. And so as we think about like food deserts in general, when I left the family farm, I thought by today there'd be fewer food deserts. There's actually more food deserts than ever before. And why is that? My opinion is not enough of the farmers are focused on direct to consumer or owning the supply chain. And so you have to have these larger farms kind of get conglomeratized up and then be further and further away from people, which the supply chain is, there's a lot of problems with the supply chain. But I think the answer is owning the supply chain, the vertical integration, the farmers going direct to consumers. And if they can solve that, then every community can solve its own food problem on a local level. And I think that's really important because people buy into their community members who are actually the farmers. Case in point would be going to farmers markets. Farmers markets are loved by everybody in the community.
Yeah.
So how widely available do you think that these urban agricultural practices could be to individuals given like their price and availability?
Price is a really big talking point. So over the years, before we had the Clayton Farm Salads brand, we had a home delivery service where we would harvest from our farm and deliver within a 30-mile radius to someone's doorstep through a subscription model. We had a lot of people tell us it wouldn't work because of the logistics around it. We're pretty stubborn as a team. And so when we started kind of building out our solution, we said, we think that people will pay for a quality product that's grown locally. They'll pay for the service, and then they'll also pay to know that they can have fresh local food year round, which is not the mindset of an average Iowan, especially those who go to a farmer's market, right? Like dead of winter, a foot of snow outside, you're not thinking you're getting any food from a farmer down the road. If we could change that mindset, I think that's really, really important for getting people to buy into paying for a product or a service. If they can pay for both, then that helps build a company or a business sustainably. And I think that's really, really important. Beyond that, I think at a certain scale, I would love to be able to see more of our restaurants and through partnerships and franchising actually expand and launch in rural communities. But we just can't go that direction yet until we're at a big enough scale where we can take some of our profits and put them into locations that's not going to be as profitable.
What has the shift of urban agriculture looked like in the communities that Clayton Farms is available in? And kind of going off that, how do you think it's helped with food security, and has there been negative or positive feedback with that?
The biggest one, just thinking of our own statistics, when in the past we've posted a position on Sci-Hire for a farm production assistant. So someone who's going to work 15 to 20 hours a week on the farm side. They'll be handling seeding, transplanting, harvesting, cleaning, everything with production. We've posted that position, had 72 applicants. And we were blown away by that many applicants. It was super overwhelming for one part-time position, right? But when I started to look through the applicants, only like 15-ish of the applicants were actually like horticulture backgrounds. Other applicants were everything from mechanical engineering to computer science to business. And so as we started having these conversations with potential applicants, we started to realize more and more people, especially college-age individuals, you no longer want to know just where your food comes from, but you want to understand its environmental impact. You want to understand all of the inputs. So a lot of younger people are willing to roll up their sleeves and jump in to learn that. So that right there told us there's this growing demand for people just understanding, urban farming, at least at that community level, which we think is awesome. On the other side of that, we started having a lot of community members reach out, and they would ask for a tour of our farm. We'd give them a tour, and then they would ask if they could volunteer just to learn more about the food production. And so that right there tells you from a community level, there is that demand there. And so how we've evolved that specifically is into what we're calling Salad University. And so we have repurposed our space in the Iowa State University Research Park. And then we have brought in researchers, faculty members, students, and community members to essentially learn in that environment and actually get into production in that environment. They could do their research, or they could actually try to, turn it into their own urban farming business. We want everybody kind of being there as a melting pot. I think that's really important for a community to have access to something for hands-on learning, because then that gets, of course, more and more people excited by it. And so if every community could kind of have that setup where it's truly an open and collaborative environment, that's how you kind of get the snowball effect going, in our opinion.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's like, I feel like you think about growing up in Iowa, especially growing up around agriculture, you don't really think about, not always think about where your food is coming, or, not seeing that. So that is interesting with people, really wanting to learn more. I like that.
Especially on just the, Iowa meat and potato state, right?
Right.
And, growing up, I did not have nearly enough vegetables on my plate as I should have. But then you kind of look at the rural community side, and a lot of people, everybody can respect a farmer. It's a lot of hard work. Farmers end up putting in the most work, and most times end up with the smallest slice of the pie. And that's why we're trying to change that through, owning the supply chain. Mm-hmm. But kind of a step beyond the meat and potatoes mindset is so many people in Iowa even, they didn't have access to a farm. So they grew up thinking I'm surrounded by farmland. This is awesome. This feeds a bunch of people. The reality is hardly anything grown in Iowa goes to people, right? And so I think that we could also provide that balance there. And people, if they think about, growing food, well, who are you growing food for? And we could absolutely use more farmers in Iowa and more rural communities growing more food for more people.
Yeah. I just had one last question just about your business specifically. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges you faced, surrounding urban farming?
Yeah, so every day I'm putting out a fire somewhere. We're 7 years old as a company. Started the company in 2017. The first 3 years focused entirely on indoor farming technology. And so for us, we said, what is an average indoor farm out there, and what does it look like? And we started to realize average indoor farm in the U.S. is 50,000 square feet, really, really big space. A lot of them have raised venture capital and then turn around and put that money to work in trying to build robots to run the farms. That, in our opinion, isn't possible yet. So you spend too much on the robots, they have a too long of payback period, and then that makes that farm go out of business before it can reach profitability and become a sustainable business. And so we asked ourselves, what if we could grow food as close to the consumer as possible? So instead of 50,000 square feet, what if we could do 1,000 square feet? And if we could work with multiples of 1,000 square feet, then we could more easily find underutilized or vacant space. So our very first area of growing was 500 square feet, then it was 1,000, then it was 2,000, then it was 4,000 like we have in the research part. On the restaurant side, that's about 1,200 square feet, so that works pretty well for our setup there. But as we've gone down that path, there were a ton of hiccups and hurdles with the technology to try to figure out. That took us almost a little over 3 years. And then kind of comes that next step of, we're a startup. We're always searching for a repeatable, scalable business model. And so we felt really good about the technology piece. But then the next kind of wave of hurdles was, what is the best and most sustainable business model? So for 3 years, we had the home delivery service. We thought that was really good. Benchmarked it against the rest of the industry as far as path to profitability goes. Average indoor farm takes 7 years to turn a profit. It took us 2 years to turn a profit for the home delivery service. But 2 years is still a long time to light a lot of money on fire to figure it out, right? And so that led us down the path of, what if we could jump into the space where a bunch of restaurants are shutting down and bring an entirely new purpose to it? That has brought with it its own pros and cons, right? And so the challenges around that, quick service restaurant space, I'm pretty sure almost all of us have probably worked fast food at some point, or grocery or retail, something like that, right? The turnover is really high. So that's a lot on the hiring side. So we try to really focus on hiring the right people who are, they care that they are a farmer instead of just a restaurant attendant, essentially. But then as we expand and scale, the challenges we have now is we're moving towards franchising. And when we have somebody reach out to us who says, I love this concept, I want to have it in my location, we need to understand their market and their community, and if their community members are going to be excited by this concept, because it's so critical for us to find the right partners for the right areas to expand into. But that's kind of front of mind today as we're going into expansion mode.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Our next guest is Veda Klinkhammer, who's a senior studying healthcare management here at Iowa State University. Veda grew up in Balltown, Iowa, and graduated from Western Dubuque High School. Thanks for joining us, Veda.
My name is Veda Klinkhammer. I am a senior down here studying healthcare management. I'm from a really small town called Balltown, Iowa, and I went to Western Dubuque High School.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. We will just get started with some questions here. So my first one is, what does a balance of urbanization and protecting our farmland look like to you?
Honestly, I'm not super familiar with the balance of urbanization and protecting farmland specifically, but I think it's really important to use the land and space we have responsibly and reasonably, allowing space for farming and population growth.
Awesome. Thank you. So then my next question is just about your personal experience. So I was just wondering if any of your personal experiences have changed your perceptions towards land.
Yeah, so like I said previously, I'm from a really small town called Balltown, Iowa. It's near Dubuque. It has a population of 75, so I've always been around farmland, and I've been actively involved in FFA in high school, so I've always had a pretty strong stance on farmland and its importance. But on the flip side, now being a senior down here and being exposed to many people's experiences and backgrounds, etc., I think the importance of providing housing and the expansion of new business venture ideas is extremely important to keep the economy growing and expanding.
Are you aware of issues surrounding insufficient agricultural land? And if so, what have you seen or heard about this issue?
Yeah, I'd say I'm a little bit familiar with the issues that surround insufficient agricultural land, but population is increasing, so clearly more people need to be fed. But to answer your question, the limited land that there is, it's harder to continue to keep up with the increasing population, which in my opinion just creates a spiral effect since more people means more housing, more roads, more everything. So to keep up with the supply chain and so forth, really in the end we need more space to live. But how are we going to continue to feed all of these people? But on the flip side, there's also a problem with issues surrounding deforestation and soil erosion, the use of chemicals, pesticides, etc., and contaminating water and soil that I've heard. I'm not really familiar with all of this, but I also know that's a problem too.
Yeah, definitely. Are you familiar with possible solutions for limited farmland, such as precision agriculture and or like urban farming practices?
Yeah, I'd say I'm a little bit familiar with precision agriculture. I know going back home, I see a couple of farmers have those big, huge drones that are flying over their farmland, which I believe it helps with a higher yield on the same amount of land that they're using. Also, urban farming, I've heard allows people to grow in cities, like on rooftops or apartment complexes, to offer like a community garden, which isn't necessarily going to ever replace traditional farming.
Our next guest joining us is Edwin Suarez, who is the Director of Integration at Landis in Des Moines. Edwin has been with the company since the beginning of 2023. With his background in agronomy, Edwin oversees projects and strategies within Landis related to ag tech and innovation, product development, sustainability, regulatory, and compliance. Edwin received his bachelor's degree in agricultural engineering from Earth University and graduate degrees from Purdue University in soil science and plant nutrition with an emphasis in soil health. Edwin has been working in the agricultural industry for over 15 years, working internationally with the United Nations and in multiple sectors of agriculture, such as manufacturing, distribution, research, and academia. Edwin has also worked for the USDA NLAE lab here in Ames, Iowa. Welcome on, Edwin.
Well, it's my pleasure being here in this podcast. I'm Edwin Suarez. I'm the Director of Integration at Landis. Been in that role for 2 years. I have 15 plus years of experience in the ag industry, international, and here in the US in multiple sectors, academia and extension, manufacturing, product development, just the industry overall, farmers directly. So this is a topic that it's close to me, and I'm excited to discuss more about the availability of land and the future of it.
Awesome. Thank you. We're really glad that you could join us. So yeah, we'll just kind of run through what we have here. So my first question is just what your opinion is about our current land usage and availability in the US.
A big red light. I mean, it's an alarm. It's alarming in multiple ways. The first one is we are losing the amount of farmers that we have in two ways. One, by number, and two, by age. So what do I mean by that? More and more farmers, even though the land that has been out there, it's reducing, it also the number of farmers are it's going down. So what happens is consolidation has been a big thing when it comes to farmland. That means that big farmers get more land and little farmers get out of the equation. That is an issue when it comes to land. The other one is ownership because it's different than if you own a house, you take care of it than if you kind of like just rent it. A lot of land is rented, and that also affects kind of like availability. But then in general, it's just the availability of good farmland. I mean, we live in Iowa, and Iowa it's actually blessed with some of the best soils in the whole world. But in general, we do have a big challenge when it comes to how much land we have to produce, and then the urban expansion and just industry in general, how that is going to take some of that land moving forward. So it's alarming in multiple ways, and it's a topic that we should all be concerned and get involved.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. We did like some of the research for this. We talked a lot about, about how it is so hard for like smaller farmers to get started nowadays just because of like the price and everything. And yeah, you kind of like hit on some of that. What do you think are some solutions that could maybe help us with these issues with like land availability and even food production?
Yeah, I mean initially the easy one to say is prices. I mean, once prices go up, those smaller farmers have more chance to compete. When prices are down, it is very hard because then it's a volume game. It's like a small local store in the middle of Washington, Iowa versus a Walmart. It's volume versus convenience. So that's where prices are the obvious. Now there are lots of factors that are going to affect prices. So that one's just the wishful one, I would say. But then there can be policies. There can be policies the same way we have policies for, let's say, whenever you buy your first house, you get tax breaks. Whenever you actually apply for some, again, different loans for an EV car, you get some tax breaks. We got to be able to support legally and financially our farmers too, especially the new ones, the young ones. We got to be able to encourage for educated farmers as well to kind of like go back to it. It's not usually there has been this misconception that if you stayed in farming, it because your dad did it and your grandpa did it. But no, you can go to school and grad school and then go back because it's exciting and you want to make it something really nice and unique. But part of that is there has to be a system of support, both again, financially, taxes, legally, that then allow that. And I feel like the public perception too has to change with that so that we, to be honest, we make farming a cool thing. It can be just where we don't know where our food comes from and we just go to a store and buy things. We got to really connect our farmers to the urban world and make everybody realize where what it takes to eat and consume and more important to produce.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, how have your personal experiences changed your perception towards land and land usage?
This one is one that it's pretty close to me. My experience, again, I have about 20 years of experience in the ag world and has been in soil health mainly. And my biggest impact, my biggest perception is just that soil is there and it's just like this infinite resource and we can just keep farming and through time and everything I've done I've realized and come to terms that no, it's just like a bank account. We keep taking from it every year, and that's I call it that 90% of the farming that we do is actually soil mining. I call it. My background is very technical. So when we just keep taking resources out of the ground, when we just taking all the inputs out of the ground, we really are lowering the quality of our soil. So that has been the biggest change, the biggest perception. And I feel like, thankfully, we have actually started to change that in the past, I would say 5 years. Now we're talking about soil health. Now we're talking about regenerative ag. Now we're talking about practices that can help with that. So I started working in this area probably 15 years ago when it wasn't that cool and it was just a bunch of crazy people. I actually worked for the USDA TILF lab back when it was called the TILF lab right there on campus at Iowa State. Now it's called the NLAE, which again, I'm fun for that lab. But that is the thing is that has been my biggest change in perception is to realize that it's not just, hey, we have soil and it's good and we have a farm, is that we can lose it. We can lose the quality, we can lose the productivity. We got to invest in it and we got to just leave it in better shape for future generations than just farm it, make some profit, and see you later.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that though, that like you think the conversation is starting to change a little bit, that is um good to hear. Um then kind of on the flip side, how do you think urbanization and our growing population have impacted our land availability for ag?
That is gonna keep being an issue. I remember when I was wrapping up I was finishing my PhD program at Purdue. Gave a call to my Boilermakers, even though Iowa State is close to my heart. Um, I remember actually the challenge, Gabisa Ejeta, who won a World Food Prize Award, who is kind of like a Nobel Prize in ag. I remember sitting down with him and he said, straightforward, Edwin, this is the challenge. We gotta produce twice the amount of food that we produce right now in the world by 2050 in half of the land that we produce it. Because we know that that expansion is going to take about half of the cropland in the US and pretty much across the world. So we're talking, we gotta double the production because in half of the size, just to kind of like maintain the production levels that we have today. And that is just because of growth, because of population, because of urban just growth. So the challenge is going to be, I mean, that when we talk about the impact in ag, we got to just get really good at what we do. As I said, we're talking about lowering the quality of our farms, lower the quality of our soils, and now we're talking that we got to produce twice in half of the area. So that's the big impact. We are starting to tackle that, but more important, we now are aware that that's going to be a big issue, and we got to grab that bull by the horns and tackle it 100%. So, as I said, the biggest impact is we got to produce twice the amount in half of the acres, to put it like that. And it's all due to growth of population worldwide.
Yeah, yeah. So kind of branching off of that, we're talking about those issues. What sustainability agricultural practices do you think could help us maximize that productivity of the land that we do have? How can we actually double what we're producing?
Yeah, no, I mean we have to realize that first of all, there is not a silver bullet. And that has been a problem because most farmers and agriculture in general, we have always looked at products like, oh, I'll put this product and it'll give me 3 bushels or 4 bushels. When it comes to the quality of our soils and that land productivity, there is not. Let me tell you, there is not. So we gotta really, it's like investing in your savings account now. We gotta start putting back in. And when we talk about what practices, there are a lot. So there is not one, it's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that we need to dive in. So we can talk about some simple ones that now are a little bit more common, such as cover crops and cover cropping, because you incorporate some of that organic matter. We can also talk about reduced tillage, no till, strip till, because we know that kind of like heavy tillage can decrease some of those carbon pools. We can talk about inputs themselves, inputs that are low in salinity. We can talk about products that help with soil health to increase, because it's not only the soil that you have, it's all the biota that you have, all the microorganisms, all those earthworms, all that kind of like live in soil. That's, as a soil scientist, I always like to remind everybody it's soil, it's a living organism. So we got to kind of like reactivate it. So all those practices can actually help us improve the quality of our soils and therefore improve the productivity. So my key there is every soil has three properties: physical, chemical, biological. We have been really good at chemical, and that is NPK. We put some nitrogen that the crop needs, we produce X. We put some phosphorus, we put some potassium, etc. We need to start working on those other two, the physical and the biological properties, in order to really increase the productivity. And the good thing is we're doing it right now. We're tackling it, and I feel like the tides are turning, the waves are coming and helping us, because once we start tackling those, we're really going to increase the productivity. And the key is that it's going to be a sustainable productivity. It's going to keep increasing with time rather than decreasing with time.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. Um, So then again, kind of with that, how do you think we can educate about this? Like obviously the farmers and everybody needs to know, what these solutions are, what they can be doing. What do you think are the best ways to really push that?
I feel honestly, this is for me, sadly, I feel like the biggest way to educate is to show the negative side. We gotta make our farmers and pretty much the general public aware of what losing one farmland and then losing productivity looks like and what it means. So I remember doing an exercise with growers where we could show all the for farmers all the benefits of a cover crop, and they would still not adopt quite a while. Now we can show them how much soil they lose when they don't have a cover crop, and how much that soil is if you just go buy it at the Menards, and then they would be like, oh, I need to do this. So I think that actually showing the flip side, the negative side, talking about it more directly, saying like, "Hey, we're gonna lose a lot of soil. Hey, we're gonna lose a lot of productivity. Hey, your grandkids might not have a soil that is gonna be that good and that productive." And to showcase scenarios that will have happened in other states. As I said, Iowa has been very blessed with great molly soils from those glacial tills that is just like having a great, it's like Iowa is almost like that. That we inherited we're some of those trust fund childs because we inherited a really good account. But hey, we can look at other states that don't have that and actually see how that productivity has declined and how now there are some areas where productivity is very null. And we can let that happen. We actually got to protect what we have below our feet and start actually increasing that productivity.
Yeah, yeah. So then kind of to round out this part, what do you think, we've talked about urbanization, we've talked about protecting farmland. What do you think a balance of this is? How do we still produce our food and still allow our, population to grow?
I feel that one, we gotta demonize farmland and farmers and agriculture. We gotta really close the gap between urban and agriculture because there has been a true segmentation there. The urban side, one doesn't even know where their food comes from, and they think farmers are bad. They're destroying everything. They're applying pesticides that are horrible. But then on the other side, the farmers also think, well, the urban side, they don't know what they're talking about. This is bad, like that. So to bridge, to actually have conversations in between is key. I always tell everybody when they ask me where to start, I say, go to a farmer's market and start talking to the people that is producing food. But to be honest, that is where we can start. We can start by bridging, we can start by talking, we can start by saying, okay, well, maybe I'm going to start supporting my local farmers. Maybe I'm going to start going to that farmer's market. Maybe I'm going to start being more aware of what type of food, what type of everything I'm buying, because guess what? A lot of these efforts are going to require a little bit of a premium when you're buying. So if you're going to buy a regenerative farm input, call it even eggs. Right now, you see eggs, you have 10 types of eggs, and you're paying for free range or etc., organic. Well, it has to come almost the same way towards the end when it comes to regenerative agriculture and quality. It has to come with kind of like I would say the market meets the farmer and say like, hey, I'm gonna support what you're doing. And besides that, the other thing that we can do, I'm a very big fan is urbanization doesn't mean that you are disconnected from agriculture. I mean, you can grow some veggies if you're in an apartment, if you live somewhere, have a nice garden, because more important than saying, oh, that's going to be your food source, I think it connects you to what it means to grow something. I think it connects you to actually know, oh, it's not easy. Oh, you got to apply some products to keep the quality, to prevent the bugs, to etc. So I would encourage everybody in their lifetime, no matter if you live in an apartment in New York or in a rural area, to grow something, have a garden, and then go to a farmer's market, connect with growers, start talking to them, go visit, go do internships, go work for a little while. And maybe that's part of school programs. Like we got to connect both the urban side to our rural side, and we kind of like got to do the best on that side. And I feel like by doing that, we really are going to find a bit of a better balance. Both are going to be always intrinsically connected. And I always say, one of the biggest issues in ag in general right now is everything is black or white. And to be honest, gray is good. And we need to be a little more gray. We need to be able to talk and find common ground and middle ground. It's just like politics. I always say, if you go far every way, then the other side is not going to listen to you. We need to sit in the middle and talk. And that's how we kind of like bring that balance for me.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really like that answer. Just, having those conversations and yeah. Um, do you think you're seeing a shift in the new generation of farmers on, just how they view land and land usage and sustainability? Do you think that's changing at all? Do you think it's going to continue to change if it is?
I feel like it's changing. In general, I feel that especially the younger generations of farmers and younger, I'm calling everything like 50 and below because the average farmer's age in the US is like 63, I think, something like that. So we're calling everything 50 and below young. But I do believe that it is changing. It is changing slowly. It doesn't, and that's the difference. It doesn't have to, that's where the gray area is important. I always say adopt something, adopt cover cropping. That doesn't mean that you just became a hippie East Coast farmer or a hippie West Coast farmer. No, hey, it means that you're going to start developing practices that are going to help you. But I do believe, and to be honest, one big advantage that we have right now is social media. I see now farmers talking more on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn than ever before, and we need that. We need more influencers. We need more, as I said, we need to make farming and regenerative ag and soil health and everything a cool thing because it is cool and it's exciting to talk about, and it should be a cool trend and a cool post and a cool hashtag. And it's something that everybody should talk about for me. So I do believe it's changing. It has to keep going, and we just gotta go with it. But I'm very positive towards how things are changing.
Good, good. Well, hopefully people listen to this podcast and think that ag is cool. Um, in what ways then are you communicating your work to the farmers and to consumers just about what you're doing with everything with the land?
Yeah, no, well, myself and Atlantis, I'm very directly related to our sustainability team. We have conservation agronomists. We work with our farmers 24/7. We actually sit down with them, go through practices, what they can do. We try to find the money to do it. There is money out there from companies, CPGs, Nestle's of the world type that we can actually try to kind of like get some of that money for the farmer to actually kind of like sponsor or compensate for some of the costs and then helping them do that and then to the public as well. We're talking in three ways. We're talking to a farmer, we're talking to a general public, and we're talking what we call upstream. That is talking to the manufacturing CPGs, consumers goods companies, the Walmarts, the Nestle's, the McDonald's, because they also need to be part of this change. They need to connect with the farmer. They need to know where the food that they are going to put in people's inputs and goods are coming from and actually be able to care. And most of them are really making that shift. So connecting all those three dots is kind of like what we're doing. And I would say it's not an easy task, but it's an exciting one. And I do feel like it's one definitely worth it because at the end we do this because we love what we do, but we want to do it. I mean, Atlantis, we always talk about the farmer of the future. This is for the farmer of the future, and that's for the ones that are, again, kids right now and the generations to come. The challenge, as I said, twice the production in half the ground. So we gotta help them right now. We can't just pass the hot potato and be like, ah, you're it. We really got to do something about it.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and then what do you think are some agricultural technologies that you think could be like taking off in the near future? What do you think is going to be something that a lot of people are going to start wanting to implement?
Yeah, no, this is exciting because I mean, it makes me feel dumb by the week. Everything just keeps changing so fast. It's like like you have a phone and within 5 months, it's kind of like already old. They have the new shiny one. Ag is kind of like catching up with that. We have a lot of technologies. We have like drone technology, for example, is one that it's really taking off right now. And when we talk about drones, we talk about everything, spraying, scouting, etc. AI, as we see AI out there in the world, it's going to change agriculture. I am sure of that. It's going to change because it's going to make us, thank God, smarter. A lot of that knowledge that a good old agronomist knows now can all be in a chat GPT type where we can be like, hey, I have this crop and it has this weird disease. What is it? And AI could help you kind of like identify, oh, it's this and this is what you should do. Just the other day, I was reading a report that AI can identify like 90% better than actual doctors, medicals, diseases in the human body. Well, the human body is not as complex as I mean, it's it's but way more complex than a corn plant. So we should be able to actually do the same thing in ag. It should be to where AI can help us really identify and help manage our crops way better. So AI in general, I feel like is going to take off in the ag world like crazy. And then some of those technologies like cover crops, satellite imagery, internet, and the impact that internet can have out there, like for us to think now that you can be in the middle of nowhere, Iowa, and with something like Starlink, you can have internet and what that means in terms of being able to detect things, analyze things, it changes the game. Before it was someone with a notepad and a pencil. And that changes. If you have a library on your hand, it'll change the way we do things. So I believe that, again, internet accessibility, AI, drones, and kind of like some of those new technologies are really what are going to take off completely. And I look forward because I'm sure by in 5 years I'm gonna be the old dinosaur that has to catch up with a lot of this new cool stuff.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope today's discussion has given you new insights on the challenges and potential solutions we face regarding land use and resource management. As we look to the future, we encourage you to make thoughtful, informed decisions that will contribute to a sustainable and balanced world for all. Stay curious, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in this week. We really appreciate you all for tuning in, and thank you to our wonderful students for this episode and the guests that they brought on. I learned a lot about this topic, and I hope you guys did too. So, with that, we will close up this episode, and we will see you next time on the Cat Pod. To email us with any comments, questions, or concerns, please send us an email at contemporary@iastate.edu.